Hello everyone, it's me Harry, and today we're going to be doing a special Day 16, Day 17 Mediavent calendar installment. So in this one, we're going to take a look at the rest of my Electronic Arts titles. So this will be split into two parts. So part 1, which will be this one, will focus on the PS2 and Xbox games. And part 2 will focus on the GameCube, Wii, and Xbox 360 titles. This won't be including games I've already featured in the previous parts. And this will be just from what I can remember from my memory. I won't be including DS games either, so My Sims on the DS, which you can see here, won't count. So then, let's go. So we're going to start off with the PlayStation 2 launch title, SSX, a snowboarding game, and the first title released under the EA Sports big banner. This was released in November of 2000. It was a PS2 launch title, as I said. And it started the cult classic SSX series. And here we are. Here's the disc. And there's the manual. The back has a little EA Sports big banner. Warning, no rules, no limits. Enter at your own risk. Representing its extreme sports nature. And there's a reason why the EA Sports big titles have a cult following. Well, because they are really, really good. Next up is a Japanese title that was localized by Electronic Arts outside of Asia, and that's Swing Away Golf by T&E Soft. So this was released about a week or so after SSX, but I don't know for sure. So here's the no, not the disc, here's the back. So it's a arcade-style golfing game. And here's the disc and the manual. And then there's nothing on the back. X Squad. This is another Japanese game, but this is one that EA did themselves. It was developed by their then Japanese division, Electronic Arts Square. Yep, they actually did develop a game, which is actually quite surprising, because they were normally just a publisher for EA titles in Japan. And this was the only game they developed. But it's a very generic, shooter game. There's nothing much to say about it. And on the back is an ad for the game Kessen from Koei, which EA published outside of Japan as well. Theme Park World, an enhanced port of the original Theme Park World for the PC and its PS1 counterpart. So this one was developed by Bullfrog Productions, like with the original. And then here's the back. And this also came out in 2000. Made a good kid-friendly installment from EA's launch selection for the PS2, and there's the back, which has the Electronic Arts hints and tips thingy. So yeah, as I said, I won't be including anything I've already shown. So some of the Namco titles that they published, I'm not including in this video. It's just what I haven't shown yet. Here is Kessen itself. This was the last of EA's games released in 2000, developed by Koei. The sequel was published by Koei instead and distributed through THQ Europe. So EA only had involvement with the first entry. And then on the back, it advertises Theme Park World 007 The World Is Not Enough, which didn't even have a PlayStation 2 version. And X Squad. So that's very interesting. Explore the new world of gaming with EA games. Challenge everything. Vroom! That was before they did that. Driving Emotion Type S. So this was a very strange racing game that was developed by a company called Escape, which was a subsidiary of Squaresoft. And this was one of Squaresoft's only racing games. And it was their first PlayStation 2 title, I think. So this is another game that EA published in Europe. It's not a very good racing game, though. But it did have some licenses that EA held. So, not all harm was done. There's nothing on the back of the manual. Quake 3 Revolution, an enhanced port of Quake 3 Arena. Developed by Bullfrog Productions as well. This was the last game that they developed before they were merged into EA UK. Licensed from id Software, the owners of the Quake IP. And of course published by Electronic Arts. So it is indeed very similar to Quake 3 Arena because it is an enhanced port. But it has some additional features and it's probably not as good as the Dreamcast port, but still a fine game regardless. The back just has logos for EA games and id Software. Rumble Racing. This is a game that was a sequel to a previous game EA developed that used, I think, the NASCAR license. I think it was called something like NASCAR Rumble, but it never came out in the UK or Europe. Whilst this sequel, which doesn't have the NASCAR license, does. It's essentially a kart-style racing game with a heavy arcade gameplay mechanic. This was released sometime in 2001. Here we are. And then the back has this. It has like a rock style thing on the back. Let the games begin with Electronic Arts. Well, maybe not anymore. They've never really been a good company for years. Here's another EA Sports big title that I have, Sled Storm. So this was released in 2002. I think it was developed by EA Canada, like with most EA Sports titles. And it was a sequel of sorts to a PS1 game of the same name, or a reboot. I don't know what you could say. And then the back, it's just the typical back you'd see on EA titles at the time with the EA logos all sitting there. The Simpsons Skateboarding. So this was a game they co-published with Fox Interactive. They co-published most of their titles then on. So this is a skateboarding game featuring The Simpsons and it was developed by the Code Monkeys. Except it's not a very good game. It's just a very low-effort Tony Hawk's knockoff. At least the artwork's nice. And then the back, it's, once again, typical EA logos on the bottom with the then newer EA Games logo on there. Right around the time they did introduce the Challenge Everything slogan. Final Fantasy X-2, or Final Fantasy X2, from Square Enix. So this is the sequel to the original Final Fantasy X. And the very first time a Final Fantasy title had a sequel, if you get what I mean. So EA published this game in Europe, so even after the merger between Square and Enix, the company still published games through other companies. So like Unlimited Saga was published by Atari, for instance. And then it wasn't until around 2004 when they started publishing games on their own. So re-releases of Final Fantasy X-2 did have were published by Square Enix themselves, but most versions were published by Electronic Arts. So we have some adverts for stuff related to the game, the official guide to the game, and then there's the manual. Some nice artwork on there. Adverts for EA stuff on the back. And then that's the last of the PS2 games, so now we're moving on to the Xbox games. So here's another Fox Interactive co-published title, The Simpsons Road Rage, released in 2002. So this came out, I think, a week after the original Xbox came out in the UK. It's a port of the PlayStation 2 version, with some enhanced graphics, but nothing else. It's pretty much the same game as the PlayStation 2 version. Here's the manual and the disc. And then here's the back, bright blue, with the EA logo on the back on there as well. Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets, developed by EA UK and ported by Eurocom. So Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets had an assortment of different titles released for different systems. So like there was the PS1 version by Argonaut Games, which was based on the PS1 version of Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone by the same developer. There was the Game Boy Color and Game Boy Advance versions. And then the 6th gen console versions were done by EA UK, whilst Eurocom ported the PS2 version over to the Xbox and the GameCube. Confused? I am. It's very similar to the PS2 version, but it does have some little differences, especially when it comes to flying around on your broomstick, where you can't land anywhere you want, like in the PS2 version. You can only land in certain specific spots. Same thing as before. EA logo and Warner Brothers logo. I don't have Prisoner of Azkaban yet. I do have the PC version of it, which was a separate game, but obviously this is not about PC games. I'm only showcasing the console games. Tide the Tasmanian Tiger from Chrome Studios. So this was a game EA published, and they published the sequel as well. Go Wild Down Under. And I do love my 3D platformers. So this one is equally as good as other 3D platformers. Yeah. I'm a bit silly, aren't I? Aliens vs. Predator Extinction. This was the last of Fox Interactive's titles that was published through Electronic Arts, as this was right around the time when Fox Interactive was bought out by Vivendi Universal Games. So this is a real-time strategy kind of game set within the Aliens and Predator universe. Here's the disc and whatnot. The back, nothing special. Same as always on these. Burnout 3 Takedown, developed by Criterion Games. So this was the first Burnout title published by EA, and that was before Criterion was bought out by EA. This came out in September of 2004. It makes it look very gritty, even though it's technically just a really fun arcade racer with lots of crashes and destruction. Well, not as much as a destruction derby game, but still. And now, he puts the boom in Boomerang. Here is Tide the Tasmanian Tiger 2 Bush Rescue, also from Chrome Studios. And then the third one was published by Activision, but it never came out in Europe. It only came out in North America and Australia. This came out in November of 2004. And then, as I said, the third one came out in 2005. The back, nothing special. Same once again as always. The Herb Sims in the City. This was a Sims console spin-off, and it was the sequel to the Sims Buster Now and the Sims console. Developed by Maxis and released in 2004. It uses the Sims 2 logo on the bottom, but it's a Sims 1 tie-in game. Yeah, it was basically like edgy Sims, if you get what I mean. And it had the Black Eyed Peas making appearances. Here's the disc and the manual. And then the back, it's the same as always again. By then, there was much less variety when it came to that kind of thing. And lastly in this video is Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire, released in 2005. So right around then, Electronic Arts retired the EA Games banner and just simply used a standard EA banner. And by then, the PC versions of Harry Potter games were the same as the console versions. So here is the pack. And then inside is the 2005 EA catalogue, featuring all their games from the time. But this is the Xbox version of the catalogue. I've seen the PS2 version a numerous amount of times. So you have Batman Begins, Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire, The Sims 2 console, Battlefield 2 Modern Combat, Burnout Revenge, Marvel Nemesis Rise of the Imperfects, From Russia with Love 007, Medal of Honor European Assault, The Godfather the Game, Need for Speed Most Wanted, FIFA 6, Madden NFL 6, NASCAR 6 Total Team Control, NBA Live 6, NHL 6, Tiger Woods PGA Tour 6, SSX on Tour, and that's it. And then the back of that catalogue just has that. And then the back of the manual, aside from the newer logos, that's pretty much it. So that's the end of part 1 of this video. So part 2 will be showing off all the other titles, including PS1 titles, GameCube titles, Wii and 360, and you know what I mean. See you later, everyone. Bye-bye.